Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James. And on my podcast, my guest and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. All right, welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and we believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Therefore, our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in once again to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of our social media pages, as well as all of your podcast listening platforms. And also, most importantly, guys, please check out our website, our YouTube channel for the podcast, which is our Deal to Heal podcasting network. Right. And when you go there on YouTube, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network channel, you'll find not only the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is there, but you'll also find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast is also there, as well as some other podcasts that I have on that channel. So again, you'll get the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where you can make sure that you don't miss a podcast at all. So make sure you guys do that. So we're gonna jump right in it today. Today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. James. How are you doing?
Oh, Ernest, I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. I want to say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me today. So do me a favor, James. We're going to jump right in it. Introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about what you do.
So I'm considered one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. That said, I have a son and 3 daughters, and my daughters are in their my son was first, so he's 42, and my daughters are in late 30s. And I learned a lot about daughters and how different it was. With my son, is play baseball all the time. You know, we had lots of fun and everything else. With my daughters, it's conversations. They would start talking to me about stuff that was like, whoa, are we really going to talk about that? Yeah, Dad, come on, sit down and listen. So, but because I am supposed to be this, behavioral management specialist, I discovered when my middle daughter was my oldest daughter is a type A. She's like, "Hey, Dad, come here. Dad, sit down. I want to talk to you." So communicating with her was easy. But our middle daughter, Lauren, was the quiet one. She still is, and she's successful in business. She's actually taken a lot from me, which is really powerful. But when she was 18 years old, I remember her talking to me, and I was saying, "Wow, you're 18. This is really great." And she said, "Well, Dad, you're supposed to be this behavioral management specialist, and we don't have a good relationship." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You're so focused on your business and making money and trying to be successful, and I'm the quiet one. Is you never actually when I try to talk to you about my life and what's going on, you try to solve my problems instead of just shutting up and listening." And I'm
Mm.
like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, and you're like a problem solver. That's what you work with businesses and all that stuff, and you try to solve problems. So with me, instead of just being my dad and learning about me and us connecting, you're just trying to solve my problem all the time. And then, I just want you to be quiet and listen sometimes." And I started thinking about it, and I realized what she's saying is true, is that I never, I mean, I got so busy with my business and with all that other stuff. Our oldest daughter, who's a type A, so I know about her because she said, "Dad, come here, turn your face." She grabbed my face. "I'm talking to you, Dad." Okay, okay, But yeah, I always wanted to have a good relationship with Lauren, but I didn't. And so because I wanted to figure out how to be a better dad to my daughter, I started interviewing other dads who have daughters.
Mm.
And before I knew it, I was realizing I was interviewing so many dads that I thought I would record them on a call. And I ended up recording over 100 fathers of daughters, and it was profound. Because of my behavioral management background, I would ask them tough questions. But I learned the trick. You don't hit them with a tough question up front. You ask them simple questions. You kind of work your way up, and then you ask again a few tough questions, and then you go back to some simple questions, and then go back to tough, and then people are comfortable, answering your questions. And they would start telling. I had this guy who was a lawyer, one of America's top lawyers, and so he has um, a son and a daughter that are his own, and then he has a daughter that he adopted. And it was blew my mind. So here's a tough guy, and I was like, it was his daughter that had us interviewing her dad. Okay, and we didn't know the questions we would ask because we didn't share the questions. We didn't want people to know up front what we were going to ask. But she figured this is going to be really valuable. I want you interviewing my dad, and she worked it out. And I remember talking to her dad. And it was good that it was on the phone because this guy was scary. Okay, what do I get myself into here? All that stuff. And I had questions. As I get close to the end of the questions, he was crying on the phone. Okay, and he said this. He said, "So my son and my daughter," and he starts talking about the daughter that he and his wife gave birth to, and she was fabulous, and she has an education degree and all this stuff and everything else. I said, "Okay, let's talk about your other daughter now." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And he said that he adopted her, and she's about the same age as his other two kids, and her mom was a drug addict, and so she got him into drugs and alcohol, and so we had to work her off. But then he stopped and he said, you know um, she's changed. She fought hard and changed and stopped doing drugs and alcohol, and actually went to school and became a teacher. She just graduated to be a teacher. And my son and my daughter worked hard for their sister. That's their sister. And he stopped and he said this thing, and it just blew my mind, blew his mind. He said, I thought she was the problem in our family, and yet our family was boring without her. I realized that my son and my daughter, I got to see what they're really like because they fought to make sure that their sister became okay. And because of that, before her, we had a boring family. Yeah, we had degrees and we're successful, all that stuff. But now I got to see my family because I saw how they fought for their sister. And I just, it's she's molded our entire life, our entire family. I mean, without her, we'd have a boring family. And she is the most important. And he starts crying. She's the most important thing in our family. I never even thought of it. In fact, how long are we going to be on this call? Because I want to call her.
Right,
It's
right,
like, okay,
yeah.
you know, it's really powerful. But it's
Yeah,
just
I love it. I love it. I love it, James. I want to go back to something you said real quick though, because I had a moment with my daughter also, right? So my daughter's 21 now, right? And she's been staying with me lately. She came home from college, and so she's been staying with me. And we're having this conversation. She comes to me and she's like, "Dad, she's telling me about her day or whatever." And I go into dad mode, right? And so I'm like, "Well, you need to do this or whatever." So, similar like you. And she like, "Dad, everything doesn't have to turn into a lecture." You know what I mean? And she's like,
welcome to
"You're
the
good. Like, I
club.
just want you to listen. Like, you don't have to tell me. We'll have time for that. Tell me what I should do and how to fix it." She's just like, "I really want you to listen." And I had that moment like you did, where it's really like, "Oh, okay, let me just be quiet." And not necessarily over dad it. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to point that out because I think that's an amazing thing. And I definitely want to get more into your book and the different dads and daughters that you interviewed for your book. I definitely want to hear more. But before we get that far, I want to talk a little bit more about your experience, as a father. And so, being a dad with several daughters, you can choose one that you. First of all, let me go back. What are your children's names? Because I always forget to ask. What are your children's names?
So I have a son, and then I have my oldest daughter is Morgan, and then our middle daughter is Lauren, and our youngest daughter is Erin. Well,
Okay,
actually,
cool.
to show you how stupid I am, we named our kids kind of close. Our son is Jordan, Jordan, Morgan, Lauren, Erin, and so we could call one kid, "Hey, Morgan," and all of them will respond, which is really great. It's good.
So I'll tell you a story similar to that. So I have 8 siblings, right? It's 9 of us, and all my mom and dad. My dad's name is Ernest. He's Ernest Senior. My mom's name is Ann, and so all the boys' names start with E's. All the girls' names start with A's. And so imagine you got 9 kids, and five girls, 4 boys. And so whenever my using not using my dad, because my dad, it didn't matter if he called anybody, we all was coming. But with my mom, when she would go to call someone, she would literally like just go through the whole list of names before she got to the one that she was trying to call. So she was like Ernest, and just to keep on going down, like, okay, yeah, that one, until she get to the name of the one she wanted to call. Uh, so that being said, James, so you have 3 daughters, and you can tell us a little bit about each of them, or just choose one to kind of focus on, the experience. And so my first question is, how did you find out that you were going to be a dad? And that's, I know you already had your son, but when it came to your daughters, how did you find out that, okay, hey, we're having another one? Was it a surprise, or were you guys actually planning, like, all right, we're gonna, plan to have more children?
Okay, so I'm a bad person. Okay, I want to tell you about this. I learned that no, but I think you'll agree with me on this one.
Okay.
Um, I was I was not a good thinker when I was young.
Mhm.
Okay, and so I had my wife. We weren't married yet, but my wife said that she's pregnant. She wasn't supposed to be pregnant, but she got pregnant. Okay, and so my brother talked me into, you need to talk her into having an abortion. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Well, okay." And he's like, talked me into it. It's okay, And I was stupid because I wasn't thinking it through. And so I went to my wife, who was absolutely profound. And I started talking to her about having an abortion, like using the words that my brother said. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm not having an abortion. So I want you to understand this. You have 2 choices. You have to choose whether you want to be with me or not through the rest of your life." And I was like, "Oh, I definitely want to be with you." And I realized I never thought it through. Like, do I really want her to have an abortion? I never actually thought it through. I didn't understand about even being a parent. And so it became profound for me on two levels. One is because I wanted to be with her. But second is I realized that I was easily talked into the idea of having an abortion and talking her into it without me thinking it through and saying,
Mhm.
wait, I want, I get a child. This is actually going to be really cool. So when we had a son, I remember I saw this show on TV, which was great. And it said, you don't have to worry, we feel like we're not educated to be parents. It isn't like you go to school to be a parent and learn how to do
Mhm.
this and this and this and everything else. It said, but this woman said, she was a psychologist, and she said, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you love the child and then communicate that to the child. If you love your child and communicate that to your child, you will not mess up. And so that was really good for me. There was another thing they said, which is really powerful, and that is wings and roots. Every child needs wings and roots. The roots are, these are the rules, but the wings are, yeah, you can do your stuff too. You want them to be creative and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so I realized, wow, this is really powerful. But so we had our son, and I would play baseball with him and all that stuff. We had lots of, guy stuff. We didn't have to talk too much about life.
Yeah.
We just had fun, in this age. We knew what to do. We're guys. When I had my daughter, our first daughter, Morgan. So I realized this. I would hold her in my arms, and there's like Winston Churchill is this fat like guy who was the head of England. Okay, and so I'm holding my daughter, and I'm going, "Oh, you're so beautiful. You look just like Winston Churchill." My wife says, "Don't say that." And I said, "Oh, she doesn't understand. She just knows I love her." So it was really great, and it was really fun having her as a daughter. I got busy with my business. And when we had our second daughter, Lauren, who was actually about a year apart from Morgan, um, it was really great. Actually, and it's one of the things that happens was our two kids are totally different. Our son was like, he didn't like to get his hands dirty and everything. I went like, raising a kid is so easy. I don't get why people have the issue. And then we had Morgan, who's like the exact opposite, putting food on herself and like painting the wall with ketchup. And I mean, she's fabulous. She is very fabulous, but she was very different. I remember I had I got on a bus. We're from Montreal originally, Canada. Then we moved to Southern California, and just before we moved, I shut down my business, and then I got on a bus to come and meet my wife, who was at a community college. And so we're on this crowded bus, and I've got Morgan in a stroller. And so we get on the bus and go right to the back of the bus, and we're standing up with everybody standing up. And then she starts throwing up on the bus, and me like a guy. I didn't have any Kleenexes or napkins or anything else. And so the first thing that happened was everybody who was in the back moved to the front of the bus. That was the first thing. But the second thing that happened was women who were on the bus had all these napkins and Kleenexes that they gave to me, so I got to wipe it up. It was really a mess, but it was really fantastic. Um, but so we had three kids, and then we moved to California, and then eventually had our fourth child, our third daughter. But I just, it was so profound for me, the relationship with girls talk to you about stuff a lot more
Mhm.
than guys do. You
Yeah.
know, guys are like, oh, I'm not going to talk about this. Girls are like, now their daughter, hey, let me tell you about my sex life. What, really? You go, I don't know about. It's like,
Right.
no,
Time
yeah,
out.
sit down. I want to tell you. It's like, okay. And it's really this communication thing. One of the things, so I started interviewing fathers of daughters to try to figure out how to be a better dad to daughters. But I started learning things from dads that related to me. And one of the things was a lot of the dads, about maybe a third of the dads that I talked to 101 fathers and daughters, but about a third of them explained how they love their daughter, but they never said it to them. And they don't know
Mm.
how to say it in such a way that it feels comfortable and they can communicate that. And I went like, yeah, I don't know if I ever said that to my daughters. I mean, I did when they're really young, but now that they're older, I don't say I love you. It's for us guys, it's like we're tough. I don't say that, just stupid. And so yeah, but so I have this friend. So I wrote the book. I didn't expect I was going to write a book. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just wanted to be a better father of daughters. but it ended up being really good. And I got permission so I could, use the recordings. I was set up a website called Father-Daughter Project, which is really still open. So you can actually hear some of the recordings and other stuff. But I eventually wrote a book that includes a lot of the things that the dad said. And I have this friend, Maggie, and she's in her 60s. And she's never had a relationship with a guy, not a long-term relationship with a guy. And she's never gotten married or anything like that, or, just had a long-term relationship. And I didn't realize it. She started telling me this, and I realized like how profound dads have a relationship with the daughter and affect women. So she's telling me she's from Ireland, and they drink a lot. It's like they're all drunk all the time. You got to drink with your buddies, so you're always drunk. And she said, I thought that my dad, I read your book, and I thought, and I'm not selling my book, I'm just sort of explaining this about her, because she blew my mind when she said this. She said, so I thought that my dad was just a terrible person. He never interacted with me. He never wanted to communicate or anything else. But when I read your book and I realized how many dads have trouble telling their daughters that they love them, and she said my dad had just passed away about 2 years ago. And I feel really bad because I really wanted to talk to him because of this. She said, I remember I was sitting, I was in grade 5 or 6 or whatever, and I was doing homework, and my dad came in, and you could smell the booze on him because he was drinking with his buddies. And he came up to me. I thought my dad never interacted with me, didn't love me, but I'm remembering now that he came up to me and he said, can I help you with your homework? And I said, no, you're all drunk, go away. And I never realized, but I actually scared my dad, that he felt uncomfortable coming to me, but he was trying to reach out. And I realized several other times in my life, he actually reached out to try to, have a connection with me. And I pushed him away. And because of that, I realized I've never had a relationship with a guy, because I have this perception that all men are like that, that they don't want to communicate with you and they don't want to get close to you and everything else. And I think right now, I got this all wrong. I'm realizing my dad, several times in his life, in my life, he reached out to me and I pushed him away. And yet I have this perception that it's, and she was crying when she was talking to me.
Yeah.
My dad just died 2 years ago. I wish I could talk to him about this now, because I think he was reaching out, trying to talk to me, and I pushed him away. When I realized that, it's like, how many daughters and women are affected by the relationship with their dad, and it has an impact on them throughout their lives.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that real quick, James, because how I even got into this whole world of podcasting was because I realized that every woman I had ever dated in my life was a fatherless daughter, right? And so that kind of started my journey on trying to be a help to fatherless daughters, which kind of led me into the whole podcasting space. But I remember having a conversation with several fatherless daughters, but having this conversation about the reconnection of the daughter and the father after a time of being apart. And I was talking to one daughter, and she was like, well, he wasn't there for me when I was growing up. He wasn't there for me, when I was going through this or whatever. And I told her, I said, well, I asked her a question. I said, during that time period, did you want a relationship with him? And she was like, yes, I did. I said, now as an adult, do you still want a relationship with him? She was like, yeah. I said, well, why are you still pushing him away? I said, yes, I'm not taking nothing away from him. As when you were growing up, no, he wasn't there. I said, but now he's trying to be there, and you're holding on to your emotions from your past and blocking him from being in your life when you're saying that you want him to be in your life, And she was like, like you never even thought about it, that the same thing that she said she wanted, she was now blocking because holding the past against him. And again, I'm 100% girl dad, so I make no excuses for a father that's not active in the life of his child. However, at some point when it comes to time to reconnect, we have to be able to let go of the past in order to get the relationship that we can have now. And like I said, she didn't even recognize that she was pushing her dad away, even though in her heart she wanted to bring him closer. You know what I'm saying? But it's, again, because of those effects like you said, that we have on our daughters, sometimes it affects them and how they react throughout the rest of their lives, because we're the first examples. And if this is the example
Yep,
that I have, then it's like, all right, all men are like that. You know what I mean? And so
exactly.
and so yeah, sometimes they end up pushing away, the very thing that they say that they want.
Well, and here's the thing that we have to realize, okay? Having a daughter has a positive impact on us and how we interact with other people, because
Hmm.
women, whereas I remember, and the same with the daughter. The more she has a relationship with her dad, the more she can relate better to other men. And I'll give you an example, two examples. But one is, um, I want my daughters to be tough from this standpoint. I don't want them to be bullied by some guy.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to be guys. I want them to be
Right.
feminine. Okay. But I want them to
Right.
be, you be feminine, but don't let a guy push you around. So one of my
Hmm.
daughters is involved in, they're actually involved in politics. She actually got involved with that. And they love her because she's tough, you know, and yet she's a
Yeah.
woman. Okay.
Yeah.
With us. So I saw this thing when, Iraq, when we took over Iraq, and it killed the head of Iraq, got killed and all that stuff, and had this guy, this young kid who was at UCLA, University of California, and he was on NPR, one of the radio stations, and he was telling the story, and he said, I was born in Iraq, but my parents moved right away to Southern California, and I've never actually been to Iraq. And so now that I'm in university and we have a little bit of money, as soon as the war happened and they killed the head of Iraq, I decided to go to Iraq and visit it. I've never been there before. And he says it's interesting because men are men and women are women, and they do not interact. And so because of that, guys, when they were talking tough. Hey, this guy, like, I gotta beat the crap out of this guy. You know, he said, in America, we say, I can't stand this guy, but maybe I should sit and talk with him first and see if we can work something out. We have this whole relationship because we interact with women as well as men, that comes, if we're just guys, we're going to beat the crap out of this
Yeah.
guy. Hey, that's what we're full of. But here in America, we have a real advantage over certain other countries because our society, our brain is educated by men and women. And so when you
Hmm.
have a daughter, like my daughters want to talk about stuff and they want me to shut up and listen. They still want me to interact, but they want, to talk about emotion. They're going to talk about emotional things. And I'll say, hey, look, I feel sad. Normally, if I'm a guy, we don't say I feel sad. It like makes us seem like we're invincible, we're attackable.
Yeah.
But here we have no problems. In fact, it's one of the things I know from behavioral management is that if you're talking to somebody, don't be afraid to tell them some disadvantages you have. Whereas in if we didn't, because people trust you more.
Yeah.
I'm in marketing, so I say. So when Steve Jobs came out with put a camera in a phone, I thought, like, who needs a camera in a phone? Boy, am I stupid! You should see how many pictures I got on my phone.
Right.
But by saying that, people go, oh yeah, he's saying, he's not perfect.
Yeah.
And it's just I learned that from my daughters, but it's a profound thing that we do, is that we're comfortable saying, I'm not perfect. But if you're in just an all guy society, you never say that, because I got to
Right.
be strong enough that you're not going to mess with me. Don't screw with me. And when we realize the relationship that we have with our daughters is communication, you know,
Hmm.
for them. And not every daughter is an open communicator, but when you talk to them, they start feeling more comfortable telling you stuff that's really going on in their lives. And it
Right.
has a profound impact on us. I mean,
Right.
it's amazing.
I,
By the
and
way, I had this one guy. I remember this. I'm amazed how many guys have this. Okay, do this bad thing. So this one woman, she's 28. She's 29. 14 to 24. She's 25, 25 or 26. And her father is a famous psychologist. So I don't want to say who it is because he's
right.
famous.
Hmm.
But she said, you got to interview my dad. She didn't know the questions because we didn't share the questions. But she said, I want interview my dad, and hopefully I'll be able to listen to the interview if he lets me. And he did, which is really profound. And her dad was close to her up till the age of 14, and between 14 and 24 for 10 years, he did not interact with her at all, never talked to her. On her birthday, he would take her out and stuff like that. But between 14 and 24, suddenly she had no interaction with her dad at all. And it hurt her. It was really hard. Now, she was married at 24, 25. And then she was in New York on a subway, and she met her dad. And we're like, Dad. And suddenly at 24, wow, she had this relationship with him. Okay. And because she had this relationship with her dad and she loves her dad, she didn't want to ask him. She was terrified to ask him, how come you stopped talking and interacting with me for 10 years? Mm-hmm. But hopefully she was hoping that we would ask him that, which we did, even though we didn't know that. We asked him that. I couldn't believe this. And he starts telling me, I am so I'm so humiliated. And I'm so embarrassed that I've done this. When I divorced her mom, my new girlfriend, who became my wife, said, I don't want you interacting with your past family. Okay, we're together now, and I don't want you interacting with them. And so because of that, I didn't want to lose her because she was great to have sex with and everything else. And so I stopped interacting with my daughter. And I feel terrible that I did that. And I let this woman, tell me that if you want a relationship with me, you better not interact with your family. Well, I have two other friends that I was talking to about this and sharing the story. And one guy who's like this big business guy, very successful. And they both went like, oh, and they bowed their head. Yeah, I can relate. That happened to me too. It's like, is that common? A lot of guys, and the next girlfriend or wife tells you, stop interacting with your past family. So that's what they did. But yeah, apparently it seems to be pretty common.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. And I hope that, by hearing these stories and hearing these examples that, we grow better as fathers. Because I do understand the new girlfriend or the new wife not wanting you to, be in constant contact with, your ex-girlfriend or ex-wife. However, I think as fathers and as men, we have to take our role as fathers very important, and that should be a deal breaker. Like, if you don't want me, and especially if you being a woman don't want me to be in the life of my daughter, to raise her to be a woman, that should be a deal breaker. And I don't care how good in bed you are or whatever. It's like, no, we got to think with this head, right? As men, we got to think with our head on our shoulders, more than we think with anything else, and really realize how important our relationships with our daughters are. And I want to go back to something that you were just talking about when you were saying how our relationships with our daughters changes them, but it also changes us. And I give this testimony all the time with one of the fathers that I had a conversation with, and he was saying when he found out that his wife was pregnant, he was thinking, man, I really want a son. You know what I mean? And at that time, he was in the streets real deep. He was, hanging out and doing all kinds of stuff. And he was like, man, if I had a son, I'll take my son with me everywhere I go. He'll be like, my little mini me, and he had a daughter. And what he realized when his daughter was born, he was like, man, I don't want to take my daughters to those same environments that I was in. And so because he didn't want to take his daughter to those environments, slowly but surely, he stopped going to those environments until before he knew it, he had totally changed into this whole different person, because now his daughter had influenced him so much that he wanted to be the best example. He wanted to take her to the best places and things of that nature. And that was one of my things that I always tell fathers, like, sometimes, even though we say we want sons, it's God's intention to give us daughters because he wants us to change. And when we have those daughters in our life and we really take our responsibility as fathers really serious, then even as we begin to teach our daughters and they begin to grow, they begin to teach us at the same time, and end up turning us into better men, into better fathers, into better, members of society, because we have this interaction with this person that we love so much. And I think that's just an amazing thing that daughters give to us as fathers. Of course, we want to give them the world, but sometimes we don't take the time to really think about what they give to us and how much they make us better men just by being fathers.
Well, and there's this famous guy. I have to remember what his name is, but he's a famous writer, and he would write some comedy. But his daughter, once she became 18 years old, she pushed him. He's famous. She pushed him um, to what's this? It's this one about him painting the fence. It's a famous.
Yeah. Karate Kid.
No, not
Is
the Karate Kid, but the other one where he painted the kid painted the fence. It's a famous story. He's, if I can remember his name, I'm getting old, so I forget some names.
Okay.
But um, she said, "You're a much better writer than this, and I need to push you. I'm going to edit your stories too, but you need to write it." And he starts writing stories that became world famous. Okay, then eventually, after about 14 years, she died, and he actually stopped writing the stories.
Hmm.
um, and it changed his life. But it changed his life because she was pushing her dad to do something, because she loved her dad and he loved her so much that he did what she was saying. And it's just, it was, when we think about the relationship, that women think more emotionally. We're emotional, guys are emotional, but we don't share our emotions like, oh,
Hmm.
that's sad, whatever else. Or we'll do the anger one. Hey, come here, you jerk.
Yeah.
We'll do, anger is a good one. We got that one.
Yeah.
But the sadness ones and what's really going on. I mean, I do marketing. I say, but it just, we have these emotions. All the emotions are there, but a lot of the emotions we want to hide. If we're a guy and we don't have relationships with women at all, often that's what we do is work, and yet it's one of those things that when you're comfortable, I mean, I work with tons of people, Warren Buffett's team, and, like some of the famous people in the world, Jack Hanfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul and stuff like that. And when I talk to them, I'm comfortable talking to them emotionally. I work with tons of businesses and people in business. And if they don't have daughters, I'll start talking about releasing emotion. And because they didn't have a daughter, just about all of them started feeling comfortable at releasing emotion, because we're used to blocking it. I'm not going to show
Hmm.
you any of the problems that I have or the feelings that I have, instead of saying, I'm a little embarrassed. One of the things that people in business, guys in business, girls have no problem with it, but guys in business, one of the most biggest problems they have is saying, I don't know, or I don't know how. They say, if I
Hmm.
say that too often, people are going to wonder, why the hell we hire this guy? Okay. When I'm saying,
Yeah.
I want you to tackle something that's bigger than what you've ever done before, which means you're going to be tackling stuff that you don't know how to do. It's a little out of your comfort zone.
Hmm.
And so it's okay to say, I don't know, or I don't know how. Now, I learned this from my daughters. We learn this because if I want to grow, I want to make more money, or I want to have more success or more happiness in my life, but to do that, I got to tackle stuff a little different from what I've done. And
Yeah.
if that's the case, it's okay to say, I have no idea how to do this. I'll try. Do you have any ideas? Try to get feedback from people, but then choose what you think works best. But it's just, there are these, we're blocked from an emotion standpoint. It's one of the things I found for myself. It actually made me better as a behavioral management specialist and working with companies and all these senior execs at companies and stuff like that, because I started to realize, we talked about some of the serious things without realizing this emotional things that block us. I want to do this thing, but I'm not going to tell, this I have a problem with this employee. Well, why do you have a problem with this employee? Well, he's just an idiot. Well, let's sit down and talk to him. Have you ever talked to him about that? Well, no. What would I say? Well, let's sit and talk with him. We'll sit and talk. And suddenly they go, hey, the guy's a really nice guy. I never realized that. And it's
Yeah.
because we have this wall, you know, and women are different from men. I don't, I'm not going to go through the sharing, women becoming men. I don't think that works. But anyway, but uh, but it's just women are different from men, and yeah, there's women that are tough, and there are men that are soft. I got that. Okay, absolutely. But what we want is we want both. I'll go back to my daughters. I want them to be female. I want them to be feminine, but I also want them to be tough enough that they won't be bullied or pushed
Yeah.
around. You know, and it's nobody's perfect, but it's all these elements that, think of a child who has just a mom and no dad, which is more the most often the case. For guys, for two things are going to happen. First is you benefit from having a daughter. I mean, you might have a girlfriend or a wife and another wife and another wife, but you're going to have that daughter for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She's going
Yeah.
to be connected to you for the rest of your life. And in most cases, not every single case, but in most cases, that's going to have a positive impact on you for your whole life. I mean, you'll share stuff with them that they're going to know you throughout your whole life and everything else. And we might go through changes, and that's okay. I mean, I went through some changes with my oldest daughter. She didn't understand and accept the fact that I went through changes. So she would be a little pissed off at me. And it took a while for her to start to realize that, no, I went through these changes. And, it just, and one of the things I remember was really fun was she has kids, and she has 3 kids now, little kids. And she get all pissed off, Dad, everything else. I'd be playing with her son and her daughter, and she go, oh, okay, fine. Yeah, okay, you're okay. Yeah, he's wonderful, And it's just because you have that relationship with when you have a daughter, there's a good chance that they're going to have kids too. Not always, but often
Yeah.
enough that it gives you a whole other, layer of relationships that are really fun. And it is fun after you get older and then you have grandkids. It's
Right.
a
Yeah.
riot. And
Yeah.
you see
Yeah.
what
That's when it
fun.
really gets fun.
Yeah.
So before we transition into the last part of the interview, I wanted you to tell us where can we find the book, and yeah, basically where can we find the book at in order for us to purchase it. Um,
Well, the book is called The Secret Life of Fathers, and so you can get it on Amazon. But an easy place to go, because there are lots of things that are free and kind of fun on it, is Father Daughter Project. If you go to fatherdaughterproject.com, you'll be able to find all kinds of questions you could ask if you're a dad or a daughter, and just really cool things that are interesting, little excerpts of some of the interviews we had and stuff like that. So yeah, the Father Daughter Project is a fun place to go. It shows the book too, so hopefully you get the book. But even if you don't get the book, don't worry about it. There's lots of really fun things, like questions. Like I have 7 questions every daughter should ask her dad. Like how is your father? How has does your father understand how he was affected by you?
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
question to
yeah,
ask. Hey, Dad, how are you affected by me? And then just be quiet and force him to give you the answer, by being silent. And
right.
it's, questions like that really become powerful because they start going, oh, wow, I never thought of it, but da 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 da. And you start to have a better connection with your dad. And then for dads, don't answer so many, don't try to solve so many problems, but spend time with your daughter. I see so many dads that are going to spend time with their daughter and then they're on their phone the whole time.
Yeah,
Turn off that phone and just spend time with them. And it just
yeah.
has a fabulous impact. But yeah, Father Daughter Project is an easy one to go to.
All right, all right. We will definitely do that. We'll definitely check in to check the book out. All right, all right. So we're going to make sure that we get a copy of the book. I will make sure I put the link to the book on Amazon and also your website in the description so that they can make sure that they get either or, whether they get it off Amazon or whether they go to the website, they can get a copy of the book in order for them to be able to do that. So we're going to jump into our last segment of the podcast, which is called the Getting to the Core segment. And so the Getting to the Core segment is built off of an ebook that I wrote called The Core Four, which is the core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father. And so to my audience, you guys can get your copy of the Core 4 at ebooks.ejames.com. Again, that's ebooks.ejames.com in order to get your copy of the Core 4 ebook. So James, real quickly, so when I wrote this book, I wrote it from the standpoint of being a girl dad and also of being a brother with 5 sisters, right? I got 5 sisters, was able to watch my dad, raise my 5 sisters. And so I really thought about what at its core as fathers that we bring to our daughters. And so those four values that I came up with is guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. And so of those four, and I do understand that we as fathers, I definitely more than that. But I think as a foundation, we can start there. So of those four, just in your experience with raising your daughters, what was which one would probably be the most effective that you were intentional about installing in your daughters?
Well, I want to give you first it's two of them, love and affection and protection.
Mm,
Okay. But I also want to give you this very quick story. I had a partner, a really nice guy, and then he had a stroke while he was on a treadmill. He kept trying to get me on a treadmill. I said, those things will kill you. And he got a stroke while he was on a treadmill. Okay. He and his wife, they have no kids. They have no brothers and sisters. Their parents are passed away. It's just the two of them in their whole lives. For
mm,
us, you got a daughter, you got siblings and all that stuff. You got, and it's one of the things about daughters more than sons will actually take care of you in your old age. Here
yes.
he's an old, he wasn't that old. He's like 55 and suddenly he got a stroke and he has no family members, particularly no daughters. And so one
Right.
of the things great about having a daughter is that they will be with us for our entire life in many cases, in most
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, love and affection and definitely protection because you want to show them, you know, be able to take care of yourself and have an honest opinion and not have somebody bully you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great, great, great. So the ebook is called The Four Core, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father. But if you could add a fifth core, what would that value be?
Connection, connecting to them. So you recognize that your daughter will be with you and you guys will be connected through your entire life. And I have to say, with the 101 fathers of daughters that I interviewed and the recordings, every one of them, one way or another, talked about the fact that they love the fact that they're connected to this daughter throughout their entire life. You might have divorces or breakdowns, even if you
Mhm.
don't, but your connection to your daughter is connected through your whole life, and hopefully it'll be positive.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I agree with you 100% because that's I've seen that time and time again, even in some cases where the father wasn't active in their daughter's life when they were little, once they became adults and they reconnected, them daughters still took care of them. I had a gentleman that I met. When I met him, he had just got out of prison. Right. And it just happened. I was doing church, we was doing some church ministry and doing some outreach, and he happened to walk up, and so we were able to help him out, give him some food and things of that nature. But we learned to know him. I got to know him over the next couple of years. And he told me that he had just got out of prison, and his daughter, who he wasn't really active in her life before he went to prison. But then when he got out of prison, he ended up reconnecting with her, and she started taking care of him. She got him a place to stay, got him a job, and was taking care of him, until he passed away, a couple of years later. But even that, like you said, you have that once you remake that connection with your daughter and really be in her life the way you should be, they're automatically, they want to give us that love. You know what I'm saying? And once you make sure that you're in a position where you deserve it, you're showing up, you're being the dad that you're supposed to be, you do have that person that 9 times out of 10 is going to be with you to the very end. And that's one thing that I know for sure. And it's definitely a plus on the dad side, because we don't always get it
Yep.
right and we bump our heads a couple of times along the way. But when we know we have that daughter that's always going to look out for us and always going to take care of us, it's an amazing space to be. So I agree with you 100%. So, James, before we get out of here, I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave us with a word of advice and motivation, however you feel. And I also want you to leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature where we can follow you and support you. So I want you to do that. But while you think about that, to my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys check me out on my website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org, because my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. And so make sure you guys are checking me out there at my main website. Also, make sure you guys go to ebooksbyejames.com in order to check out the ebooks that I have. We talked about the 4 core, but I also have an ebook called From Males to Men, which is for young men transitioning into manhood. And right now, my other ebook called Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self-Forgiveness. I'm giving that ebook away absolutely free. So when you go to ebooksbyejames.com, you can get your free copy of Forgiving Me. And while you're there, purchase your copy of the Core 4. Again, that's at ebooksbyejames.com. Also, we have our podcast merch with our inspirational t-shirt line, which is deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So make sure you go to Deal to Heal Tees to get one of our inspirational t-shirts and our podcast merch, which is our t-shirt with our podcast logos on it. We have one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month for talking about everything surrounding forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, even how unforgiveness affects us in our body. And so we talk about everything forgiveness. The workshops are absolutely free, but the information, I believe, is priceless. Make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next free virtual workshop. So whenever you're listening to this, either a workshop just ended or is one coming up. So again, go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and sign up there on Eventbrite for the forgiveness workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. All right. So that being said, James, again, I want to thank you so very much, not only for being on this podcast. To my listeners, James was also on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which is our partner podcast. So when you finish watching this one, go to our YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, and look up James' interview that we did on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where we talked about his book, Brain Glue, which is right behind him. As a matter of fact, I'll make sure I put that link to that book in the descriptions as well, so you can go purchase both of James' books. Again, James, I want to say thank you so very much for being here, for sharing your information and your expertise. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Okay, 2 things. First is father-daughter project. If you go to that site, whether you're a dad or a daughter, there's all kinds of content there that I think you guys will enjoy. And then last thing is, if you're a dad out there, call or text your daughter right now, right now, okay? And say this: I love you. I may not say this often enough, but I want you to know that I love you more than just about anybody in my whole life. And do that, and it will have a positive impact.
No doubt, no doubt. All right. And we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we amplify the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Make sure you guys tell your daughters that you love them. Tell your fathers that you love them. Make sure you are building that positive daddy-daughter relationship. All right. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else, that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.